Welcome to the third dimension. For the past decade, the Yemeni diaspora in the United States and across the globe has suffered alongside the families back home through war, famine, and disease. The earliest Yemeni immigrants to the United States were mainly adult men who worked manual labor jobs and sent money back to home to their families. But starting in the 1970s, in response to political upheaval, Yemeni families started to settle in the United States in greater numbers. According to a recent estimate, there are over 100,000 Yemenis in the United States, mostly located in New York, Michigan, and in Northern California. To be a Yemeni American today, for most, is to have a complicated identity given the United States' role in a war that has been ravaging Yemen for a decade now. And now, with President Trump is in the White House and with the conflict still raging, the diasporic community in the United States seems to be in a difficult position. Many community members, including my guest today, are focused on doing everything in their power to keep the families in diaspora and in Yemen as safe as possible. To discuss this topic, joins me from New York City, Muna Abubakar. Muna is among a growing number of a second-generation Yemeni American women who have found a mission and a voice in support and advocacy for a community challenged by the events unfolding in Yemen and within the diaspora as a whole. She has a master's in higher education in student services. As a member of Lakwana School Board, Muna has cemented her place as a fixture in the Yemeni American community. Muna, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Now, first of all, would you give me and my audience, Muna, a brief background about yourself and your family's journey to the United States?
Sure. My parents are from Yafa, and they arrived in the U.S. in the early 70s. Shortly thereafter, I was born, and then I'm the eldest, so then there was 4 others after me. So in total,
yeah, you were born in the States, Mona, not in Yemen, yeah?
Correct. My parents arrived as immigrants, and I was born after that.
Yeah.
And they arrived, and my dad looked for work, and he started out as a dishwasher. And he did a lot of what a lot of Yemenis did when they first got here. They just worked anywhere that they could, they were accepted. It was really hard with the language barrier. And then a lot of Yemenis started working at the steel plants. That's why they settled in Western New York, Ohio, and Michigan.
Yeah.
After the steel plants shut down, that's when they started to open their own businesses. And now many of them are successful, and I'm really proud of them.
Yeah. Now, as a Yemeni girl born in the United States, Mona, okay,
Yes.
Would you tell us about the pressures of being raised in a new community, though the United States is your country, okay? But how did you cope with the struggles of being a child in a new land?
Yes, it was a struggle because, our family, Yemeni people, they're very tribal. And in America, a lot of people come from other lands and they leave everything behind. But Yemeni they hold on to their tribalism and their good morals and traditions, which is actually very good. And they were really afraid that their children would grow up without good morals. And because of that, they were overprotective. especially as a new generation, unlike maybe like our children and my generation's children, we're more adept and we are not so overprotective because we understand the culture more. But our parents were really afraid of losing us, and they were very overprotective, especially as of a female. And you can't go out to do this, you can't do that, and they figured if they're overprotective, that will maintain the good character and morals of our culture.
Okay. Now, going through your biodata, Mona, okay, I came to know that your first visit to your homeland, Yemen, was made in 1986, I believe. Yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, how would you describe the meeting with the first meeting with your original land, and what do you still remember from that visit?
It was a very unique experience. As a child who hadn't traveled anywhere before that, I really thought the rest of the world was like the United States.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about first world country, third world countries. So when we got there, we landed in Aden, and it was extremely hot. And considering that we're from New York State, it gets very cold and not so hot. And so when we got to Yemen, I thought the heat was coming from the airplanes. And I told my dad, when is this heat gonna stop? When am I gonna stop feeling this heat?
Yeah.
And he laughed at me. I'm like, why are you laughing? He said, that's the weather. And I was like, it can't be possible.
Yeah.
And I was just holding my dress like this, like, because it was so hot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Mona,
then we got-
how old were you at that time? Yeah.
oh yeah, I was about 10 years old.
10 years, okay.
Yeah, so when we got to the airport, it looked very different than what I'm used to. And then when we got to my uncle's house, I looked at
Yeah, uncle's house, is it in Aden or there in Yafa, Mona?
oh, when we arrived, we first went to my uncle's house in Crater.
In Crater, okay.
Yeah. And when we got there, I remember seeing, like in America, we have pets like dogs, cats, and
Yes.
they're friendly. So I saw the cats and I tried to pet them, and they were like wild. They got mad and they ran away.
Yeah.
So I realized in Yemen, it's survival for everyone, including the animals. That food and water are not so easily accessible like in a country like the United States. It's very, very not fragile, but it's very scarce. And I remember when my dad was making wudu for prayer,
Yeah.
I would pour it out of a Pepsi bottle, and he would say, be careful, not so much because we don't want to waste the water.
Yeah.
Whereas here in America, you turn on the faucet and it just pours and pours, and you use whatever you need. And as a child, seeing that and experiencing things like this made me really appreciate what we have here in food, resources, education, and so much more. It was a great learning experience for me.
Yeah. Okay. What else was remarkable about that visit, Mona?
So many things. So then I remember going to my aunt's house in Al Ma'alla.
Yes.
And they had apartment buildings, and they had, things that was similar to what I was used to in regarding like the home, the setup, the bedrooms and the flooring and things like that.
Yeah.
And they said it's because the British had built those during the colonization period of South Yemen or
Yeah.
Aden. And so then we went to the village, the Bilad. We went to Yafa,
Yes.
and in particular Bani Bakr.
Yeah.
And that was extremely, so many things that were so it felt strange to me, you know, like when we arrived, I said, why are all the women on the top of their homes yodeling or, you know, doing um I forgot what they call it in Egypt, but in Yemen they call it
Yeah,
yihgir.
yeah, yeah.
And
Zagharit,
my
Zagharit.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And my mom said when someone comes from another country, they do that to welcome them. And seeing like my relatives for the first time in my life, like my grandparents, my mom's sister, and other relatives,
yeah,
it is like wow. Because over here, like in school, and when I was in third grade, they would have, we're gonna, you know, create gifts for your grandparents for Grandparents' Day,
yeah,
and I relate to that because my grandparents were in Yemen, and I felt left out. And then finally seeing my grandparents, I was like, wow, I finally get to meet my grandparents, and it was such an honor and so amazing.
yeah,
And then there's so many other things in the village that were so different. Like I noticed
yeah,
the level of education was limited,
yeah,
especially for women. And, you know, electricity was only it started at Maghrib time when the sun goes down.
yeah.
And so we couldn't watch TV
TV.
until,
Yeah,
you know, time.
yeah,
And just so many. And then I learned how to feed the cows. At first, I didn't know how to do it. You had to wrap the food a certain way, and
yeah.
then I learned after some weeks. Then I became a pro.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started to learn some things, and one of the most remarkable things, whether I was in Aden
Mm,
or the village,
mm.
is that they when people found out I was American, they treated me like a superstar.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, literally like a superstar. So when we would go out to the supermarket and then I would ask my cousin, why is everyone in the window? And
Mm,
he said, because they want to say that they saw the Americans
mm.
go to the supermarket today.
Okay.
Kind of like you saw a movie star in America. Oh,
Mm,
I saw so and so at the store, you know? And then in the village, when we would play outside
yeah,
and you know, we're kids. We were thinking we're just normal kids,
yeah.
and there would be like 15 kids following us everywhere we went.
Mm, mm.
And
Okay.
as a 10-year-old, it was frustrating.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I would go hide. Me and my brother would go hide. It was
yeah.
funny though. It
Okay.
was really.
Okay. So, Mona, was that the only visit, or you visited Yemen after that?
That was my only visit. I tried to go at one point. I planned to go, and then it didn't work
I
out.
see.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's just I always planned to try to go back and it didn't work out, but I plan to go inshallah again one day.
Inshallah. Okay. Perhaps after the war ends, Mona, all of us can go back. Okay. Now,
Okay.
if I will take you back to the States from Yafa, your village in Yafa, to the States again, Mona, especially when you started lobbying for issues there in the United States, etc. And I remember, okay, that in one the first event in which you gave what we call a public speech in front of 2,000 people, okay, that was a landmark in your career as what we call a community activist, okay. Let me quote something from what you said then, Mona, okay. You said, we are in America, we have a constitution, and when actions go against constitution, I do not care if it is the president or someone in the Arab community, whoever it is, I am going to stand up for what is right. End of quote. Okay? Very strong statement for someone doing public speaking for the first time, Mona. How do you react?
You know, it's interesting because that time when I spoke, a lot of my friends and relatives say, how come you didn't tell us you're going to speak? And I really thought that well, I didn't know how good I was going to do, so I didn't want anyone to see.
Yeah. So give
But
us the context of that event, Mona.
yeah, so Trump had gone into office.
Yeah.
It was around January that time. I think we spoke either shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
And it was a protest against the Muslim ban
Yeah.
because Trump had implemented a Muslim ban, and one of the countries included was Yemen.
Was Yemen, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people who stood up against that gathered, and there was thousands of people who, and it was very touching to see a lot of non-Muslims who supported us.
Mm.
And they, it was a, a protest, a rally, and then during the rally, they had speakers, and I realized that because I was so angry and so frustrated with the situation in our country, in the USA, that I spoke extremely confidently because I had so much, I don't know what they say in English, but I speak English, but in Arabic, it's easier to say Baba.
Yeah. Outraged. Yeah. Outrageous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
outraged.
Yeah.
I was outraged at what our president was doing.
Yeah.
And I got on the stage and I just expressed that outrage.
Yeah.
And in America, everyone has to follow the Constitution. And the president and everyone who's in office is in office because they get paid through our taxes.
Yeah.
So we have every right to speak about the decisions that everyone in office is doing. So if it's someone, if it's a relative or a friend or someone in another state or the president of the United States of America not following the Constitution, then I'm going to speak up.
Yeah. So, Mona, that event was during Trump's first presidency, I believe, yes? Yeah, okay. Following your journey in the United States, Mona, you were also elected as a board member of Lackawanna City School District. My question is, what does that mean for you personally and for the Muslim and Arab community?
Well, I felt like it's really important for us to have representation. And we live in a city that is 33%, 35% Yemeni. And out of 18,000 people, there are about 6,000 Yemenis. And there was like no representation in the school district and city hall and, in leadership. So I felt like it was important for our point of view to be recognized in any decision made, because if the school system is 30 to 50% Yemeni, then the decision makers should represent those children. And there's so many things that non-Yemenis or non-Muslims don't know about our culture and religion. So when they make those decisions, they're not sensitive to those items.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who educate themselves about our religion and culture, and I appreciate them. Yeah. However, it's not the same. So I felt like it was important to have representation and to encourage others to follow my lead.
Okay. Now, if we move to another point, Mona, which is the war in Yemen, a decade of conflict in Yemen, and this conflict has had what we call a heavy toll, especially on women and children. Now, as a Yemeni American, looking at the current state of affairs, Mona, how would you describe the status of Yemeni women in the time of war in terms of resilience?
I believe the Yemeni people are extremely resilient because they're just strong and they've been through a lot, so they don't have a choice but to be resilient and strong. But during this war, everyone has been through so much. And I remember seeing during the beginning of the war, seeing women, Yemeni videos of Yemeni women in Yemen going through garbage cans looking for food
Yeah.
and to feed children. And that just hurt me so much because I felt like that's my sister and she shouldn't have to go through that.
Yeah.
And here we are, we living in, compared to them, we're living in luxury. So we here in America, we've tried to do so many like fundraisers or different ways to try to send money to help them just to have the basics like food and warmth and shelter. But it really hurts to see women suffer. They shouldn't have to. In Yemen, it was already difficult to begin with. It's a country with many struggles and challenges, and then to place a war on them was even worse. I heard a lot of people suffered from cholera, and it was very scary. Then I heard that my mom's mother, my aunt,
Yeah.
had cholera, and I was very scared. But I'm so glad, alhamdulillah, she recovered from it.
Alhamdulillah.
And yeah, she was okay. But
Yeah.
it's a very scary situation.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now, based on your psychological background, Muna, you keep listening about stories, painful stories, either from Yemen or from Yemeni Americans there at home, okay? What did you do to help these people, what we call heal of this trauma?
Well, I went to psychology because I'm not a psychologist per se, but
Yeah,
the psychologist's question is always why. Like,
yeah,
why do people do what they do?
yeah,
That always piqued my interest in human behavior. So that's why I went into it. And in regards to dealing with people, the only way to understand why people do what they do is to listen.
hmm,
And sometimes just listening to people and their struggles and their frustrations and showing that you understand and there's someone there for you to
yeah,
listen
yeah,
helps people a lot. And one thing is I'm always looking for resources. So
yeah,
when I listen to someone,
hmm,
I gather what frustrations they have and what struggles they have, and then I lead them to resources that could help them,
yeah,
whether they're in America or anywhere, or locally or abroad. There's always resources,
yeah.
or hope there's resources for people.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Now, if you would like to wrap up this conversation, Muna, okay, by this question, if you could have the US policymakers listen to you now, Muna, what would you tell them in terms of helping Yemenis end their suffering?
I would say if you want to take out the Houthis, that's one thing. But at the same time, don't hurt the civilians. And also, on top of that, what can you do for Yemeni civilians to help them progress, to help them have a better life? And in regards to food, health, education, that shouldn't be a problem for Western countries, especially America, to do something like that for the country of Yemen.
Okay, with this, we come to the end of this interview, Muna. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for
Well,
your insights, and thank you for talking to Yemen Today TV.
sure, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's all for this time. See you next week with a new edition of The Third Dimension.